We're holding Tzadik Gimel Amud Aleph, but we have to first start from Tzadik Beis Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. There was a machlokes over here regarding two people doing a malacha together. That according to Rabbi Yehuda, if each one alone could have done the entire malacha, and they did it both together, then they're both patur. However, if each one alone could not have done the entire malacha, then they are chayiv. They're both chayiv. However, Rabbi Shimon says no. If two people do it together, they're always patur. And then we mentioned from a brayso, Rabbi Meir says the opposite. Even if two people do it together and each one alone could have done the entire malacha, still, since they're both doing it, the entire malacha together, they're both chayiv. Now, everyone agrees what we learned at the beginning of the Masechta, that if people do a malacha together, each one does another half of the malacha, then they're definitely patur. Like if someone removed it from Rosh Hashanah, passed it on, the other person put it down in Rosh Hashanah, then for sure they're patur. So we have to know how this works, the different types of half malachas. Why do some say this is chayiv and that's chayiv? What's the logic behind it, or what's the source behind it? So the Gemara is going to bring a brayso which bases it all on a pasuk regarding korban chatas. Hitanu Rabbanon. Once again, a few words before, but not really. How do we know these different opinions? Hitanu Rabbanon. It says in the pasuk that nefesh achas kisechta bishgaga. If one person will do an avera by mistake, so then it should bring a korban chatas. Ba'asoisa achas mikol mitzvahs Hashem ashaloi siyasano, when it will do one of the mitzvahs of the Eibishter which Hashem said not to do. So, although the word ba'asoisa literally means when he, in Lashon Nekeva, the nefesh, will do an avera, but Chazal also learned it as if it says ba'asoisa when he will do it, when he will do that avera. So from that we see ba'asoisa ha'isa eskula. If one does the entire avera, then they have to bring a korban chatas. Not if you do part of the avera. Now that could mean one did half, the other one did the other half. So no, the brayso will right away say it also means if they both together did the entire malacha, but it comes out that each one just did a half. So it brings examples. Ketzad. Two people are holding a big fork that you gather the grains with, and they were gathering the grains, which that's the malacha of ma'amer. Bekirkar, they were holding on the special tool that you separate the threads on the loom with. V'shaiftin, and they were separating the threads. Bekumos, they were holding together the pen. V'koisvin, and they were writing. V'kana, they were holding on to a bamboo. V'tzil Rosh Hashanah, and they removed it to Rosh Hashanah. Yachel yu chayovim. You might think that they're chayiv because together they did an entire avera. Talmud loymar ba'asoisa. If it did it, hoisa eskula v'lo hoisa miktsasa. If it did the entire avera, not if it did part of the avera. All those are examples of things, of actions which each one could have done alone. I mean, people that work in the field, they could usually gather the grains together. You could separate the threads in the loom on your own. They could gather things on their own. They could separate the threads in the loom on their own. They could carry a bamboo on their own. Now we're bringing examples of things that a person could not do on his own. Beigel shel dveila. One was carrying a big wheel made out of pressed dried figs. They should do to press a bunch of dried figs into one big wheel. It's quite heavy. And one person cannot carry it alone. And he removed it to Rosh Hashanah. B'koira, two people were holding on a big beam. It's very heavy. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, im lo yachil echad lo hitziyoi. If one man could not remove it on his own, veitziyu shnayim, and two people removed it together, they are patur. Like these examples, one of them alone could not have done it. Therefore, if two, I skipped. In these cases, Since one person alone could not have removed it, then they did a complete malacha, and therefore they're chayiv. If they could have done it on their own, pturim their pot. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, that it all depends if you could do it alone or you could not. Rabbi Shimon no, even if one person alone could not have removed it, and the two removed it, pturim they are pot. And that's why it says ba'asayso. The pasuk that we said before, that you have to do the entire malacha, or I'm sorry, ba'asayso, when he did it. Now we're reading it as a pshat. Ba'asayso, when that nefesh did it, yochid shaso chayiv. If one person alone did the entire malacha, then he's chayiv. Shnayim shasu p'turim. If two people did it, they're pot. Okay. Now the same pasuk, they're both taking the words of the same pasuk, and he's saying no, only if you could do it alone, and Rabbi Shimon is saying no, even if you can't do it alone. How are you both learning two opposite things from the same pasuk? The might come up with you. What's behind their machlekes? Says the Gemara Bahai Kro. Let's read the entire pasuk and see what we could learn from this pasuk, and you can see where the machlekes could be. It says V'nefesh achas techta bishgogo miyam oretz ba'asayis. The pasuk says lots of words over here with lots of emphasis. Nefesh is a singular. Achas is a singular. Twice it's a singular. Then it says ba'asayis, when you do the complete thing. So there are three things which are like excluding and saying only in specific cases. Rabbi Shimon, okay, Tulasam Yuta Ksivi. There are three words in the pasuk which are excluding and saying only in specific cases. So how do we learn them? Nefesh techta, achas techta, ba'asayis techta. One person that doesn't have Aveda, not everyone. One person that doesn't have Aveda, not everyone. The complete Aveda, not half. So chad, one of these exclusions, limuti, comes to exclude the most obvious case. If each one did just half of the malacha, and that's it, I only lifted it, the other person just put it down. We didn't do together the entire malacha. V'chad, the second extra word in the pasuk, limuti, the next less obvious thing. Ze yochel v'ze yochel. If they both did the entire malacha together, but they could have done it on their own, and therefore they didn't really do a complete action. They put only half their effort. The chad limute, one comes to exclude even the biggest chiddush. If each one alone could not have done it, and therefore you might say I did my complete malacha, still the third extra will say even then you are potter. Rabbi says you're right. There are three extra words, but there's another halacha that I learn that I have to learn from that extra words. I'm only left with two extra words, and therefore I only do two chidushim. I have a malacha, oiker meniach, and two could do it on their own. But the third chidush I don't have a word for. Let's see. Rabbi Yehuda. Chad, one extra word in utiza oiker v'zemeniach. The first one is coming to exclude if one lifted it up. V'chad, and one comes limuti zayochel v'zayochel, when both are doing it together, but they both could do it on their own. V'chad, limuti yochid sh'osa b'ras best. We have a special pasuk telling us that if Beis Din made a mistake and paskin a certain din regarding Shabbos or anything which is chayiv koros, and they said you're allowed to do something which you're not allowed to do, and most Yidden followed, then the Beis Din has to bring a carbon for everyone. What if only a few Yidden followed? So definitely the Beis Din doesn't bring a carbon for everyone. But does the person himself have to bring a carbon? So one of you could say, yes, we also bring the carbon. Or you could say, no, it's not his fault. It's not a shogig, it's oinus. He followed Beis Din, what he wanted to do. So Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that he's potter. But he doesn't just base it on the logic that he's an oinus. He learns it from this pasuk. Only specific people have to bring a carbon chatas, excluding someone who followed Beis Din. It's not the halacha, but that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. And therefore, I'm left only with two extra words. So that I could only exclude the two less obvious chidushim. I'm sorry, the two more obvious chidushim, the two less chidushim. If each one did a half a malacha, or if they both did it together, but they could have done it on their own. However, the greatest chidush from each one cannot do it on their own. I don't have where to learn from. But Meir says, no, I only have two extra words. And they hold like Rabbi Yehuda regarding someone who follows Beis Din. So I'm left with one extra word. So I could only learn the most obvious chiddush if each one did a half a malach. But Rabbi Shimon, I'm sorry, I skipped. Rabbi Shimon, which says that he has three extra words, where is he going to learn this din of Rabbi Yehuda? He's not going to. Rabbi Shimon holds that if you follow Beis Din, you're chayiv. Rabbi Shimon Yachid Shasar Yiraz Beis Din chayiv, and therefore you cannot use that extra pasuk for that case because he doesn't hold of that, and therefore he has three extra words. Rabbi Meir, which he says that even if they both could do it, they're chayiv. That's because he only has two extra words, and he uses one for Rabbi Yehuda that if you follow Beis Din, you're potter. So he's left with one extra pasuk, one extra word. So all he can learn from that is the oiker v'zeminiach. But Rabbi Meir miksiv nefesh techta achas techta basayisa techta. What do you tell me? There's three extra words. There's no three extra words. If it would say a nefesh which did an avera, one who did an avera, when you do it and he did an avera, it doesn't say that. It says nefesh achas kisachta bishgoga. That's the normal way of speaking. Nefesh achas. Nefesh achas has one emphasis. Nefesh. You can say a bird, nefesh, of course a nefesh. Achas. Achas is an extra word. Basois is an extra word. Nefesh is not an extra word. And therefore today, there are three words which are coming to exclude. So one, chad limuti zoiker v'zaminiach, each one to just have a malacha, v'chad limuti yochid shasar b'yiraz Beis Din. So you hold like Rabbi Yehuda in the fact that if you follow Beis Din, you're potter. And he says there's only two extra words, so he's left only with one chiddush if each one didn't have a malacha. So we had a three-way machlokes regarding two people who did a malacha together. You have three options. One did half, the other one did half. They did it together, but each one could have done it on their own. They did it together, but they couldn't have done it on their own. Now, obviously, that's the order. The first one is the more obvious that they'll be potter. The second one is less, and the third one is less. So the whole question is, how many extra psukim do we have that come to say that not everyone is chayiv? Rabbi Meir says we have one extra pasuk. Rabbi Yehuda says two, and Rabbi Shimon says three. It says nefesh achas kisachta b'shgaga ba'asoisa. Nefesh achas ba'asoisa are extra psukim which come to minimize who is chayiv. Rabbi Shimon says we have three extra psukim. Nefesh achas ba'asoisa, half and half together, and each one could together, each one cannot. Rabbi Yehuda says no. I have three extra psukim, but I have another din that you, Rabbi Shimon, don't agree to. That if I follow Beis Din, I'm potter. So I have three extra words, half and half together, and we both could. If we follow Beis Din, what about together and we both cannot? Chai. Rabbi Meir says the opposite. I have only two extra words. Nefesh achas is one expression. I agree with you that if you follow Beis Din, you're potter. So I have one to tell me half and half potter. The second one to tell me if I follow Beis Din, I'm potter. What about together and we both could? There's no extra word. Definitely not if we both can't. And then in these two cases, they are chayiv. Fine. Okay. Then the Brisa mentioned that if two people did it together, one could and one cannot, he is chayiv. Who's he? There's two ways to learn it. You might say the one who could is chayiv because he did the full thing. The other one just supported him. But you say the other way around. The one who can did the most he can. And the one who could took off a bit of his load. The other person is helping him. And therefore, I only did half of my ability. And the other person obviously put everything, because if you can't do the whole thing, and someone else is helping, and the other person is happy to have help, this one will put in all his effort. And the other one will just, do the rest. I don't know. But he's doing the most he can. So he should be chayiv. Those are the two ways of looking at it. Says the Gemara, Amar mar zeh yochel v'zeh ni yochel di b'hakil chayiv. If one could and one cannot do it on their own, Everyone agrees that they're chai. Hey, minayim chai. Who's chai? The one who could. Why? The one who can't. My covered. What is he doing? He's not doing anything. If I can do it on my own and he cannot, I'm carrying it. He just, like you want your children to help for Shabbos, don't do this job, do that job, or whatever, help for Pesach. You're helping them help you. So he wants to feel like he's helping. Okay, hold. You're not doing anything. If you can't do it on your own and I could, I'm doing the whole thing. Why? They come and say, yeah, badly. He's helping a bit, and he's taking a bit of the weight. It's not the same heavy as if I would do it on my own. So why should I be chayiv? I'm not putting my whole effort. I'm not putting my whole koyach. Whenever I have someone who could do the whole thing and someone else is just supporting, he's not counted halachically. We don't look at him. We look as if he's not there. And therefore here, the person who's helping and I don't need his help and he can't really help, he's not there. So it's as if the whole load is on my shoulders. So now we're going to bring a bunch of other halachas where we see this concept that if someone helps and he's not necessary, we ignore him as if he's not there. Says the Gemara. We have a Mishnah clearly saying this logic that Messiah in Bimamish. Regarding a Zov, the rule by a Zov is that if a Zov is sitting on something or resting on something which is designated for rest, it's not meant for something else, then it gets a very strong Tumah, Ava Tumah, from Mishkav Azov. So the fact that the Zov is like sitting or lying or putting down his weight on it. It has to be the majority of the Zov weighing on that, standing on that. So, if you have a bed standing on 4 feet, now the bed has to stand on 4 feet, otherwise it will tilt. So when the Zov is sitting on the bed and the bed is standing on 4 feet, okay, the bed is one entity, so the bed is tummy. But if I put objects under the feet, so each one is supporting the Zov, because without them he can't sit. So they're all holding the majority of the Zov. What about the Zov is sitting in an animal? And the animal has some cloths under its feet. So the animal could stand on 3 feet, but the animal is standing on 4 feet. So we say that these cloths are not tummy, because one of the feet is not doing a complete job. And really, each one of them is just supporting the other 3. You need 3 to hold. One alone is just an extra support which isn't necessary. And therefore, they are torn. Let's see. Izov was sitting on a bed. Each one of the feet had another piece of cloth under that foot. Tameis. Because they cannot stand only on 3 feet. But Rabbi Shimon Mitar, why is Rabbi Shimon Mitar similar to our Gemara? Just like by Shabbos, if you have 2 people carrying an object, and each one cannot do it on their own, it's still considered that they're each one doing half, and therefore it's not counted. Here also, each foot alone is doing just part. You're right, you need him. So what? He's not doing it alone. He can't do it on his own. He's not counted. And therefore, each leg on its own, and the cloth under that leg is not considered, is not If the Zov was sitting on an animal, and he had 4 cloths under the feet of the behemah, they are torn, because it could stand on 3. Now, here we're following Rabbi Yehuda's logic. You're right, and it could stand on 3, but how could he retire each one of them? Because each one of the legs, each one of the feet are supporting something which he can't do without him, which he could do without him, right? He could do without him, but he's helping. So it's like 2 people holding a load, and each one could do it on their own. So each one is helping something which he could have done without him. So they're not counted. Each one alone is not counted. So here also, each leg alone is not counted. Since each leg alone is not counted, they're all Torah. So what do we see from here? You might ask, how come say, yeah, Badi Adadi, they're all supporting each other at the end of the day. You're right that each one, you don't need him, you can have the other three. But I'm helping. Definitely the rule is true that just helping someone who doesn't need you is not counted. So this is a proof to Rav Chisda's logic. Amar Rav Yudah Midiskarta, who says, maybe I can tell you, say, yeah, yesh b'mamish. V'shayni hachi, here it's different. The akra lo legamri. Since while it walks, it lifts 1 foot. So there were times that it was just standing on 3. They came on Zimni, I'm sorry, 1 second. So therefore, we don't know which leg was lifted. Since we don't know, it's a suffix. Suffix to B'Rshus Rabin Tor. So if he's standing in the street and you have 4 cloths under each foot, under each leg, then we're retire all of them because you never know. Maybe he wasn't resting on it. So maybe maybe if I'm just supporting, you do count me. If I know for sure that he's standing the whole time on 4 feet, then I would make each one tummy. But since it lifts occasionally 1 foot, and we don't know which, so we're retire them all. Suffix. Such a suffix, we're not retire. If you have a suffix which for sure one is tummy, you don't know which, you're a tummy. When there is a suffix, yes or no, then you're retire. But if you have a suffix this or that, but definitely one, you're tummy both. And since here it's a suffix which, but definitely 3 were resting on it. So if you're going to tell me, say, yeah, yesh b'imamish, it's just a suffix, you shouldn't retire everything. Where do we see this? So it answers back to Gemara like this. Since it lifts one, it puts down the other. It then fits to a zov, which is sleeping, and he's rolling, or maybe rolling during his sleeping. And me, Leitnan, didn't we learn in the Mishnah, zov shoyamutal al heisav solim. If a zov was lying down on 5 benches, 5 narrow benches, or pundois on 5 pouches, 5 belts. La'urkam, they're all up to the length, and he was lying down on the length. To me, don't tell me why. Because he rolls in his sleep, and whenever he's lying on one of them, most of his weight is on that, and therefore, since most of his weight is on that, they're all tummy. I don't know which, but he turns over. Since he turns over, he's definitely lying on one. We don't know which, so the whole tummy. However, the Rachman, if he was lying on the width, this is when he wasn't sleeping, because on the width, each one alone he could take it away, and he could still stand. So he's not resting most of his weight on any of them, similar to the legs of the animal, and therefore they're all torn. Yoshin, but if he's sleeping, Safek misapich aleim, we don't know. Maybe he rolled himself over and tamaim. So these type of svekis, we say that he's tummy. 1 second. So in other words, such svekis are very likely to happen, and definitely one of them are tummy. We don't know which. We say it's tummy. So you cannot tell me that each one of these cloths are tummy or Torah because maybe he lifted his foot and he didn't rest it at all. Then he would be tummy. So it must be, we're looking at the complete scenario. He's resting on all 4. And nevertheless, since each one is just supporting the rest, therefore, he's Torah. Elalav, definitely shouldn't have say, yeah, in Bimamish, just supporting is not counted, and therefore, it is Torah. Now, in other words, like this. Rabbi Yehuda Midiskarta was suggesting that we're talking about a walking animal. And when it's a walking animal, so every once in a while, I guess it's, or maybe not a walking animal, an animal that, I don't know, either we're afraid, or we're assuming that it lifted one foot, and therefore one of them it didn't rest at all. Lamaskana, we're talking about an animal that we know was standing the whole time, did not lift a foot. Because if it lifted a foot, then it's resting on the other three, and they would be tummy. And if it's suffix, we would make everything tummy. So we're talking about a case in the Mishnah when it's standing still, did not lift a foot, and as long as the zav was on it. And then we say they're all Torah because they're all just supporting something which the other three could have done on their own, and you're just helping them. Fine. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll leave this for the next Amud. So let's summarize. We were talking about the Mekoros for the different opinions of when two people do a malacha together, when they're potter, when they're chayim. So we had Rameir, which says if they did half and half, they're potter, but if they did it together, whether they could on their own, whether not, they're chayim. Rabbi Yehuda says it depends. If they could on their own, they're potter. If they can't, they're chayim. Rabbi Shimon says they're always potter. What is it based on? A pasuk regarding korban chatos. Nefesh achas kisechto bishgogo basoisa achas v'komitzos Hashem shaloi seyasana. Nefesh, only one. Achas, only one, not everyone. Basoisa, when it does it, the complete thing, not half. That's what we're learning. So there's three words which are saying only. What's only? Says that simple. The first thing that will come to your mind is each one did half. One did half, and the other one finished the other half. Potter. The next one is telling me the less obvious thing. They both did it together, the complete thing, but they could have done it on their own. So it's like half of their action that they could do. So the pasuk says they're potter. The third one is telling me they're both doing it together and they cannot do it on their own. So that's the least obvious, because each one is like doing the full malacha that he could do. Even then he's potter. Right? Rabbi says, you're right, but I have a problem. I have another halacha that I hold. I hold that if a person follows Beis Din, even if you don't have a majority of Klal Yisrael, so Beis Din does not bring a korban chatos, he does not bring a korban chatos. He's an oinus. He's following Beis Din. And therefore, the third word in the pasuk is coming to tell me that a person who followed Beis Din is potter. So I'm not only with two, half and half, together, and each one could do it on their own. Rabbi Meir says, no, I only have two extra words in here. Nefesh achas is one word. That's the way the Torah talks. So nefesh achas is one limitation. And I hold like Rabbi Yehuda that if you follow Beis Din, you're potter. So one that's telling me half and half, the other one is telling me if you follow Beis Din, you're potter. What about if you do it together and you could, and definitely if you can't, and I don't have a pasuk. We don't have a pasuk, he's chayim. Fine. Then we spoke about the next case. If two are doing it together and each one could do it one could do it and one not do it. Says the Braisa, he is chayim. Who's he? You could say the one who could, because he did the most thing. But he's not really. Someone else is helping him, taking away part of the load. Maybe the one who can't, because he's doing his full input. Says Rav Chisda, the one who could. Asks Rav Amuna, what about the one who can't? Isn't he helping? He's helping when he's not necessary. Messiah. Helping when he's not necessary, you're potter. Says Rav, I have a proof for you from a different halacha. A zav who's sitting on an animal, and there are cloths under each leg. Say it will be a bed, a cloth under each leg. Each one is tummy, according to Tanakama, which is Rabbi Yehuda, because each leg is necessary to hold up the zav, but cannot do it on his own. So they're joining together when they cannot do it on their own. So each one is like a complete thing, and therefore the zav is resting on each leg, and therefore what's under the leg is tummy. Rabbi Shimon will argue, and he says, no, they're doing it together. Each one cannot do it on their own. Each one's not doing a complete thing. So they're all tar. Fine. But Tanakama, Rabbi says he's tummy. What if it's an animal, and there's a cloth under each leg? He's tar. Why is he tar? The answer, so the Brisa says, because it could stand on 3. So what? So that tells me that the 4th leg is an unnecessary helper. Some say, yeah. Now each one is a 4th leg, just like when you have 2 people carrying it, and each one could do it on their own. So he doesn't need the other one. So the other one is unnecessary, and so the other one is unnecessary. Therefore, they're both potter. Here also, each leg is unnecessary helper to the other 3, in each one of them. So they're all unnecessary helpers, although you need them, but they on their own are unnecessary helpers for the other ones. Therefore, they're all not counted, and whatever's under them is tar. Asks Rabbi Yomi Diskata, maybe not. Maybe we're talking about an animal which is walking, or maybe walking, and therefore when it lifted 1 foot, that cloth is totally tar, and maybe they're all tar misafik. Says the Gemara, no, we don't do that. When you have such a suffix, you metami everything. Because it definitely rested on some, so if you don't know which, you see they're all tummy. As we see by Azov, who's lying down on different benches and rolling over, or maybe rolling over. So then we say, since probably rolled over, we don't know exactly on which thing he was mainly resting on, they're all tummy. So here also, they should all be tummy. So it must be we're talking about an animal which is standing the whole time. It did not move. And then each leg is just an unnecessary helper, and therefore it's Musayeh in the Mamish, and therefore they're torts. That's a Rayat Rab's logic. And the Gemara will continue with more rhymes.